Ready? Here we go.
Different points of view and highs and lows. A new perspective everywhere you go. Open up your mind, drown out the noise, and see if this connected. And see if this connected.
What's up, fam? The mission of this Connected podcast is to connect generations and situations about faith, life, and whatever comes along the way. To not necessarily agree, but be listened to. These conversations, of course, highlight the perspective of our various guests, and you are always welcome to agree or even disagree. But as always, we hope that it is done in charity. Now, here's your host, Catholic.dad.
Welcome back, Tony.
Welcome back, Arno.
How's Mexico? Florida?
What?
Florida? Arizona?
What are we talking about?
I think, where are we? We're in Temecula.
Temecula, yes.
Marietta? And it's awkward that we're talking to each other because Father Tomás is just like looking at us and like, am I part of this conversation? But fam, we are here in Temecula at St. Catherine of Alexandria?
Yes.
In Temecula, huge church. And we have a special guest today. We have Father Tomás, and we're going to have a really cool conversation about stuff. So listen in on the show, because one of the things, and Tony always has to make sure that I'm recording, because we want to make sure this one is covered, because Father, we have this bad habit of Tony not checking on me, and I end up not pressing record.
And then it's my fault.
And it's Tony's fault. Because he's producer Tony, that's why.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had a great week. You know, we went to Mass yesterday, Tony, with his new choir at St. Oscar Romero. Awesome, if you guys want to go to Mass. What is that? Every Saturday. First Saturday of the month. And Tony leads worship at St. Catherine.
The St. Oscar Romero.
St. Oscar Romero, that's what I meant. But you know what? Father, on this trip here, Father gave us directions. And we thought he had changed religions. Because we were like, we get here and it's like, oh, it's a beautiful church, Reliance. And then we turned right to the street that Tony put on the directions. And we ended up in a dead end. And I'm like, is this something?
Which is kind of a metaphor for life sometimes, right?
It's a metaphor for life.
There's actually a cemetery at the dead end.
Which is really like life.
Which is
we'll all end up there at one point.
Which is a really great segue to why we're here and why we took a road trip. Actually, February is going to be road trip month for us because we're going to be basically dragging all our equipment to do road trip podcasts everywhere. But a great segue about cemeteries and dead ends. We, fam, are going to be talking to Father and Tony and myself. We're going to have conversations about the occult and death and everything that comes along with that. So welcome to the show, Father.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, it's nice to be back.
It is. It's been a long time
since
you know, it's like since I made the little image of the good, the bad, the ugly.
That's right.
That was my best work. If you guys have never seen that episode, I don't know what episode that was, but I gotta tell you, I worked harder on creating that image of the good, the bad, the ugly than in editing the actual podcast. That took work. It took work to find your guys' picture, crop it, and then superimpose it on the actual picture, and they haven't taken it down. So
Time well spent.
Time well spent. I actually had fun with that, and I don't know how the picture of this one's gonna look like. What we're gonna superimpose your picture on. But
any requests, Father?
I have no idea. No idea.
But, you know, before we go on, I'd just like to share that, you know, this is not wine with yam, because although we are drinking wine, because it's Temecula, we're in wine country, and to push it down, we actually have water in a can.
Again, hitting our theme of...
Hitting our theme. The water's name is Liquid Death. Mountain water.
You can't make this
You
up.
can't make this up. Thank you, Father, for bringing...
Sponsor us.
Yeah, Liquid Water. Please sponsor us. You know, you're getting free. And then, what kind of wine is this, Father?
It's a Meritage 2017 from South Coast Winery.
South Coast
So
Winery.
It's one of our parishioners works there. Shout out to Javier.
All right.
And, it's just a nice light red wine. Not too sweet, not too acidic.
Mm-hmm. Tastes good.
ASMR.
Every episode we have to do this.
It's really good. Great episode. It's already great because I don't know
So
about you guys. But
I
listen,
didn't card Tony though. Is he alright? Is he good?
I don't know. Father, I went to dinner last night.
Uh-oh.
And I went to dinner with Tony and Bethany. Shout out to Bethany, Elena and Raul, my wife Maria, and my daughter Lauren. And I was asked for my drink. She took it. But I didn't get carded. I mean, Tony and Bethany got carded. I didn't get carded. I was hurt. I just want to share with Luna over there in Corona is that the name of the restaurant?
Mm-hmm.
Luna's Mexican restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't card me. So, I'm just saying.
And you're 20.
I am way past 20.
You're 20, so
It's from another
you shouldn't
century.
I love it. So, going on to our topic. You know, we originally, you brought this up and we were like, oh, that would be so cool. One, because you was like, hey, let's talk about this. And I'm like, cool. Because I have so many questions. Because I lived a life with you know, being Filipino, being culturally Catholic, and coming from the Philippines where they have all these concepts of what we're afraid of and what we're talking about and how we live our faith and, you know, the evil eye and things like that. And I'm like, I really want to talk about that. And I'm pretty sure that our listeners out there have these ideas of, can we do this, or are we supposed to do this, or do we believe in this? So we're going to talk about occult practices, not cult practices, but the occult, and probably delve into a couple of things that are pretty scary. I'm going to ask Father afterwards to say a prayer for us. we don't take home any bad things, and we can, because we are literally a church with a really beautiful painting in the back of the Starship Enterprise Last Supper. We gotta take a picture of this. You can't make this stuff up. But we are at St. Catherine Alexandria in Temecula. Beautiful location, beautiful place. Thank you, Father, again for coming on. I want to mention one of our listeners who is always sponsoring us. And so go to Valdez Realtors, Jose Valdez. He's always been supporting us, so please support him. He supports the podcast. So that's a shameless plug for Jose. Jose, keep the money coming. I'm just kidding. Not really. If you'd like to support the podcast, if you want us to, you know, awkwardly mention you on the podcast, you know, go to our Patreon, on our website, on our Instagram, in our bio. There's a section there called Patreon. Be a sponsor, and you too can get one of these cringy stickers and a mug right here that we are giving to Father Tomas. So, on that note, Father, tell us a little bit about why you wanted to talk about this topic.
So, this is something that I've been working on for many years now. So, when I was in seminary, the first time I ever encountered or started to question, I was actually looking at a National Geographic magazine. I don't even think they print those anymore. But, they just
have a collection.
They print a lot of you know, different topics and from different places around the world and cultural things and phenomenons. And among those was an article about Day of the Dead in Mexico, November 2nd, All Souls Day, as we know it here. A lot of people know it now because of the Disney movie. The name escapes me right now. Coco, that just came out just not too long ago. And in that article, there was a mention about Santa Muerte. And it just kind of like intrigued me. I was like, Santa Muerte, you know, holy death. That's what that literally translated. That's what it means. And so I just was like, oh, that's an interesting thing. So then I started to like look it up, and then I was like, wait a second, this is not anything to do with Day of the Dead, All Souls Day, or All Saints Day. Matter of fact, it's not even a Catholic thing. It's not a church teaching or folk devotion or anything. And so I was like, this is interesting. So I started going a little bit more and more, and specifically into Santa Muerte. And eventually in theology, so we were studying, we get our Masters of Divinity, we have a chance to get our double Masters. And so I said, well, I wanted to do systematic theology, but I'm not that smart. So I said, that's not going to happen. So we went with spiritual theology, a little bit softer on the brain. So I was like, well, I can do an exam to get the master's, or I can write a thesis. It's like 70 pages. And so I was like, well, you know, and then I said, you know what, I really want to research a little bit more into Santa Muerte. So I started doing research, and then I realized there's really nothing there. There's really not a whole lot there. Matter of fact, the U.S. bishops, I don't think, have ever addressed the teaching or what it is, or the belief system. And the Mexican bishops have sent things here and there, but there's not like there's a small book that Paulist Press printed in Tijuana that I found, and I literally looked at everything. I looked at libraries, or through our seminary library. I made all kinds of weird book requests. And our librarian was like, "Where you're getting all these books from Mexico?" And
like, where are you going with this?
Where are you going with this? So I said, you know what? I have so much material. I might as well write a thesis. I might as well write something. So what I ended up writing about was Santa Muerte, Malverde, Jesus Malverde, which is the saint of drug traffickers and hitmen, and then Juan Soldado. Juan Soldado, who's a local saint of Tijuana, the Tijuana area. And so in my thesis, I kind of go through, and just to kind of briefly share. So Juan Soldado is from 1900s. He was a soldier, a Mexican soldier in Tijuana, and he was said to have raped a child. And he was killed, executed. Well, it turns out that he was falsely accused, that it was a commanding officer that probably had committed the crime. And so he was killed in a ley de fuga, which means he was told to run, and he was shot down from the back in a cemetery. And he was just buried with stones. He wasn't given a proper burial as a criminal. Well, the legend says that after a few days, that blood bubbled up from the surface of where he was buried, and his blood cried out for justice. And so the people of Tijuana know him as a local saint. Did he exist? Yes. Historically, there is records that he existed. That story is documented. And people in Tijuana have a devotion to this person, this soldier. Is he a saint in the sense of the church? No. Because canonically, there's no recognition, and saints are known by their life of faith and of devotion. He's simply known because of an injustice that occurred, that took his life. That's a little bit different. And then from there we have Jesus Malverde, who is kind of a Robin Hood type character in Sinaloa, which is one of the big drug states in Mexico. And he stole from the rich to give to the poor. That was what he did. And so one day he stole from someone who was really powerful, and they told him, you know what, everyone's looking for you. There's a bounty on your head. You're going to get caught. It's going to happen, And so what does he do? He tells his best friend, turn me in, get the reward. It's a big reward, and give it to the poor. So he was taken and he was killed. He was hung on a tree on Good Friday, of course. And he was left there to die. And so now there's in Culiacan, which is the capital of Sinaloa, there are shrines. There's a chapel actually where his tomb is. And people go there and they give offerings and all sorts of things, ask for his intercession. Now it's become kind of a regional belief, but the people who go there are drug traffickers, hitmen. They ask for his intercession. And you've probably seen his image. He's like sitting in a chair. He's got a bag of money and like a cigar. And he looks like Pedro Infante. I don't know if you know who that is. He's a Mexican actor from the 50s.
We gotta look that up.
And so he looks just like him. Just like him. So it's kind of a mishmash of cultural elements. And that one's actually more common. I remember one time, the first time I knew I learned about him through the work I was doing with Santa Muerte. And so I walked into a priest's office in the Coachella Valley, and he had Jesus Malverde on his desk. And I was like, hey, like, why do you have that on your desk? And he said, oh, yeah. He goes, I've had it there for a while. He goes, a parishioner brought it and asked me to identify it because they didn't know what saint it was. Someone gave it to them. And I said, you know, that's Jesus Malverde. Like, he's not a recognized saint, you know. And he goes, oh. And he goes, yeah, I'd never seen it before. I just didn't know. And there's a lot of people who don't know, including priests. I mean, they just don't know. And sometimes they may even bless statues that people bring to them without knowing what exactly they are. So the progression of my thesis was that, so we have this Juan Soldado, who is an actual person, a historical figure. Then we have Malverde, later emerging, who is a mythical kind of folk hero. And then you have Santa Muerte, that's not even a person. It's like just a being. It's like a spirit. And Santa Muerte, there's some different historical, it goes back to when the Franciscan friars were in Mexico and the natives were being taught about the faith. There's a couple different correlations. Some would say that, you know, some of the gods that they believed in kind of got turned into this this death figure. Some would just say, well, it's just the foil of Our Lady of Guadalupe, just the death, you know. And the one that I found quite interesting was Saint Isidore. Saint Isidore is often portrayed with a skull in the hand. And so the natives could identify with that kind of imagery, with the skull. So it could be possible that over time, he just became a skeleton. Saint Isidore just became a skeleton. And usually Santa Muerte is also pictured with a scythe, which is used for harvesting. You know, it's the big pointy Grim Reaper, you know. So a lot of people who look at this image go, oh, it's just the Grim Reaper. And it's like, well, no, it's not. It's not. It's Santa Muerte. And so Santa Muerte has traditionally, the devotion kind of went underground because the Franciscans suppressed it. Yeah. And the church kind of said, don't do that. You know, don't. They didn't catechize, they just suppressed. Yeah. And so when something like that happens, people just kind of do their own thing. Which is why it's important when you talk about folk devotions or any kind of ministry or group, it has to have some guidance from the church. Yeah. And so in Mexico City, particularly in the neighborhood of Tepito, which is very poor and there's a lot of crime, and that's where the biggest shrines of Santa Muerte are in Mexico. However, now you can find shrines anywhere. There's a store in Paris that has a big old shrine. It's kind of a curandero store. There's an actual church in East LA where they have like a chapel and they'll have a mass. It's not a valid mass. It's not a Catholic priest. They'll use the same books and everything, but it's not a valid mass. And so Santa Muerte is not a person, so it can't be a saint. It can't be a canonized saint. Death itself is a reality of human life. But an interesting thing is that this belief in Santa Muerte is often seen in areas, and this is more like a anthropological kind of viewing of it, or sociological. People who are on the margins, who are not included. A lot of those in the LGBTQIA community are followers of Santa Muerte in Mexico. Really? A lot of those who are poor, those who are some criminal element in there too, and there's some other darker stuff in there too that we can talk about a little bit more. But in a nutshell, that's kind of what exists, and there's so many more things. Yeah. And this I have to say, this is talking about Mexican culture, because every culture has some sort of elements in it. There's a Catholic faith, but there's also different things that we follow or that have handed down to us that are not necessarily part of the faith. And then you have, you know, this witchcraft and all this other stuff that's part of like traditional faith or culture, and it just kind of depends. But we're all in a different different understanding. But it's difficult when you don't understand what it actually is. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because as I was doing research, there's actually like spells from Santa Muerte that are found in like English books that are like New Age magic, and it's like, well, it's not really New Age magic. You don't know what it is. You know, there's even like in Colorado, there's like a place where they have this devotion to Santa Muerte, and they're not even Mexican, you know. Mm. And so English-speaking people have kind of taken up this image, but they may not have a complete understanding of what it actually is. And that becomes a problem because you're opening stuff up that you really don't understand. Mm-hmm. You think it looks cool, you're like, oh yeah, it looks cool, you know, look at my t-shirt, you know, it looks really cool. Or, you know, like someone sent me this spell, or, you know, this sort of thing for me to do. And so you may have a different understanding of what it actually is. And that's why it's so important that we're catechized. That's why it's so important we understand what a devotion in the church actually is. And of course it directs us to God. It directs us to Christ. And to understand the gospel. Now some of these elements kind of are taken into this. And the easiest way for me to say it, and I've said this quite often, even when I go bless a house, you know, sometimes you bless a house and they have a Santa Muerte statue, or they have a Buddha, mm-hmm. or they have a, you know, some, you know, spiritual decorations, or whether they're decorations or they're actually something they believe in, that's something that you can't really nuance without having a conversation. Mm-hmm. But I've told people when I go visit houses, like, it's like, you got to get rid of that. Like, that doesn't belong in your home. Like, I'm blessing your house, mm-hmm. but you have this here. That's not a good thing. And sometimes I have to explain a little bit. And it's something that we have to... My goal is to publish a book from my thesis that I wrote. It hasn't happened yet. It's been like 6 years now. So
I was going to say, where do I get your book?
It's on my list. It's on my bucket list. It's on my list. I've been working on it, and part of it, the reason why, and I'm glad I didn't publish it right away, because now that I've been ordained 6 years in May, I've actually had experience now with like some of this stuff, or like seeing statues, or people that have come to me talking about Santa Muerte or different things. And so I think that's also an important thing for me to include in that, because it's not so much of just saying like, hey, don't do that. That's not the right way. It's like, don't do that, but let me tell you why. Mm-hmm. Let me explain to you like what the church teaches. Let me explain to you what a devotion should look like. Let me explain to you what this actually means. And that means you have to kind of enter into a dialogue. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people are willing to listen, and sometimes they're not. It's an interesting thing. But in a nutshell, that's kind of what kind of brought about that. And so I share about that, and when people ask me, I mean, I obviously know. And in my office, I have like probably the biggest collection of like Santa Muerte books outside of a library.
And if people just walked in there and saw that, they would take that out of context. But I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that you're writing a book on that, because as you said, it's difficult to find documentation of what the church teaches about that, because I think, as you said, we'd rather suppress than come into dialogue and catechize people on what this is, and it allows our lay people to fall into misunderstandings with the image of Saint Isidore, and even the things that always comes out in people, young people and older people like me will post memento mori. Mm-hmm. And do you understand that, or is it something that's cool that you have a skull on your desk now? And it's what does that mean? You know, how do you explain that to someone who's going to come into your space and think that, are you a devil worshiper? You know, are you worshiping the occult? What does that mean?
And one of the simplest way for me to say it is, just because something is mysterious doesn't mean it's God. Because I think a lot of people just, oh, it's mysterious, so it has to be God.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, not necessarily. You have to kind of look at what you're doing. What are you doing? What is the practice of what you're doing? And is that leading you to God? Or what is it leading you to? Because sometimes we live in a culture, in a time where we just pick up our phone and Google, like, Santa Muerte. You can do that.
I did that.
And then Wikipedia pops up, and then there's like a spell book, and then there's like different stuff like scapulars, rosaries, all kinds of stuff that will pop up. So which one's correct?
Right.
Like, which is the right thing? Like, is it from the right understanding? Is it the right, and that so many things that we have, like we have like crystals, we have people who burn sage. You go to like stores and they sell bundles of sage. And I actually just blessed a house not too long ago, and they're like, well, we burned sage because we felt there was something in the house, but that didn't work. And I said, well, let me tell you something.
Well, let's talk about that, because that is something that a lot of young people, young adults, start to get into, is crystals, amulets, and sage, and burning sage, because that's actually something that a young person asked me.
Yeah.
Can I do this? Because my parent introduced me to this regarding crystals and its healing powers. And what does the church teach us about that? And what dangers do we put ourselves into when we get into that, where we become dependent, or we start wearing the crystals, and we start doing sage in our homes to ward off evil spirits?
Yeah. So as far as like the church's stance, like the church really doesn't have a stance on geology. They're just rocks. But how do we use them? That's what we have to look at. Because if we believe that a rock has like certain power, that it can do certain things or like ward things, or that's God. God does that. Yeah. And so that's like, that would be considered, classified more like New Age spirituality, or even like white magic.
Wait, white magic?
So let me kind of, okay, good.
I'm just kidding. I was
So
just
that, nothing to do with race. Nothing to do with race.
We don't want to get canceled.
So white magic is more, is a general term, and it's probably not the best term, but just the easiest term. So it's like good magic, positive, like Wiccan, earth worship, crystals, sage, nature, worshiping nature. Nature helps us, it heals us, it brings us. That's more considered like white, lighter, in the sense of white is light. Mm-hmm. And then you have dark magic or black magic, which is easily more said, well, like satanic and rituals and human sacrifice and all kinds of other animal sacrifice and incantations and magic and that kind of thing. That things would be considered more like Santeria, which comes out of like Cuba. And you have Palo, which is from Brazil, which is a lot more like using human bones and spells, and it's a lot more involved.
And then voodoo and Haiti.
It's kind of like voodoo would be concluded in that. So there's a definite contrast between the two. So a lot of people can say, well,
I'm feeling uncomfortable.
I'm not.
I'm like totally intrigued. I mean,
Well,
this
some people would say,
well,
like, well, it's okay because I have just a stone amulet, right? I'm not like sacrificing chickens. It's not black magic. It's white magic. It's better magic than the other magic. Well, it's still magic. It's still like an understanding or a misunderstanding. And so, but I recently went to Sedona, Arizona. And they have like these vortexes where like it aligns the energy of the earth, and you stand in it and it heals you and this and that. And I'm like, well, okay, that's kind of
Did you go into
interesting.
the vortex?
I did not go into the vortex.
Okay.
There's too many tourists. Too many tourists to go into the vortex. But it's like, well, what are you looking for? You're looking for healing. So you believe that when you stand in this certain place. Now, all of us know that they're sacred places. And all of us understand, you know, there's a sense of awe and wonder in the creation of God. When you go to a certain place, like in Sedona, I mean, we drove out into, I was with my parents and we drove out where there was no tourists, like we were way out in the boondocks, and you get a sense of awe and wonder that God has created such a place as this. I mean, it happens randomly too. Like when you go to the Grand Canyon, you're just like,
Wow.
Wow, like no human hand has touched this. Like no building, no car, no matter how beautiful or how great, is capable of such a design as this. And that happens to us randomly. I mean, even if you go someplace and you see a sunset, or you're at the beach, you know, you get those moments of kind of awe.
Yeah, that's
like,
what Bethany said when she first saw Tony.
Yeah.
Well, that's...
I'm sorry. I was waiting to put that.
Was Tony wearing a crystal amulet?
Oh my gosh.
No?
Can I actually interject really quick? I have a question that kind of talks about everything you're talking about. So I'll make this brief, but I I think maybe I was 13, you know, maybe 10-ish years ago, maybe more. We were driving to Vegas, right? So you know that drive is just desert. And at one point, I think we were looking for gas or something. So we went to one of the gas stations where it's just the gas station. I don't know, it's one of the exits where it's just one gas station. There's nothing else, right? So we're going, and then we also had our dogs. So we got gas. We were walking our dogs into the desert, and what we stumbled on was very scary, because now you're talking about this, and I'm trying to make the connections. There's like, in the middle of the desert, just the candles, a little box that kind of looked like an altar, and just blood on it. And when we were talking about like this idea of opening up things, is being in contact, when I was trying to explain that to teens, like the opening up, I have a difficult time explaining that. Like, is even being in contact with something like that opening things up, or do you have to willfully like do the thing, or how does opening up work?
Yeah, so it's this kind of goes into kind of something a little different, but this whole sense of opening up like portals, you know, opening yourself up for some sort of influence. By influence, I mean demonic. You don't really know what you're opening up. So that's what I always tell people. Like, you need to think about this. What are you opening up? When you get a Ouija board at Target, like you're opening something up. Like something's happening. What is it? I don't know. Can I define it? No. Can you? No. But if something starts happening weird in your house, you're gonna call me. Like, so when you come in contact with something like that, just like randomly, the best thing would be not to touch anything. Just don't touch it. Leave it alone. If it's like left on your property, that's actually happened when I was in the high desert for a few years. And one time they left like a box of stuff on the church steps. And one of our custodians like opened it, and I was like, you shouldn't have done that. Like, and it was just like feathers and like bones, like animal bones or something like that, and just random stuff. And I said, you know, we're just gonna destroy it. We're gonna destroy it and we're gonna throw it away.
How do you destroy something like that?
You just break it.
Really?
Just break it and then toss it.
Okay.
And so, if you want to go the extra mile, you would burn it. But you can just break it as best or whatever, and then just dispose of it. And so, like the best example is this. Like fortune tellers. People go to fortune tellers. We have them all over. We have one here in Old Town. I think in the state of California, they have to say that it's like for entertainment. Like somewhere on their you know, this is for entertainment purpose. Right. But you really don't know anything about that fortune teller. The fortune teller. You don't know anything about that person. It could be someone scamming you for money. You know, hey, I'm gonna get $20 off this person and just tell them whatever.
That's evil.
It could be someone who has some knowledge of whatever studying hands is or whatever. Or it could be someone who does occult magic, who reads people's hands and maybe uses them as a way to do magic. So you really don't know, like, what kind of thing you're dealing with. And then, so that's why it's something that we have to kind of reflect and look at when we're looking at these things that are mysterious. Just like I said, just because it's mysterious doesn't mean it's God.
Yeah.
And it's something we have to kind of discern. With time, obviously, you can tell. Because if there's like stuff moving in your house and, you know, something weird's happening and you can't really explain it, and, you know, you come talk to a priest and say, hey, can you come bless my house? Then obviously something is there, you know.
And it seems like, you know, it's when people say, it's like, well, I'm not trying to open up a portal, I'm just participating in this. Because I don't see that, you know, the devil is out there and say, hey, open this door, and, you know, you'll let me in.
Right.
And it's just, for me, it's being in that presence. It's what my mom used to say, is you never know what you're going to take home with you, so don't go there. And
you know, part of it too, I think it's also different because, like, culturally, like, there's things that we do, right? Like, I know some people say, well, like, don't ever buy used furniture. It's got to be brand new furniture in your house, like, because you don't know, like, the vibes are. And I just got to say, I hate the word vibes. Like, and then people, like, on social media be like, hey, send me good vibes. It's like, just say pray for me. Just say pray for me. Just say pray for me. Don't say good vibes, because what does vibes mean? You know, what vibes means to a person who's Catholic is different to what vibes mean to a Wiccan, or a Satanist, or to. And so when you say send me some vibes, like, what are you asking for? Now, in the sense too, we don't believe like in the sense of like energy transfer and that kind of thing too, but it's not the right wording. Like, it really bugs me. That's a personal thing for me. Just when you say vibes, like, send me good vibes, or that person had bad vibes, like, just what is it? Like, just say what you need. Like, you need prayer, we'll pray for you. But in the sense of vibes too, like, it's kind of a weird, because we kind of turn everything kind of, and it's just a culture we live in, you know. Everything's kind of more pluralistic, you know. And it's like, well, yeah, just send me something good, you know.
And even when you say, you know, even with that vortex that you went to in Sedona, and people who are getting into these stones, these crystals, and to me, it almost looks like when we pray, when we tell people pray, and I'll pray for you, they're not getting that immediate gratification of what I want and desire. I don't have my, you know, a lot of times people pray and it's like, Lord Jesus, let me pass this exam, and the next day I fail. Oh, it didn't work. Mm-hmm. Or I'm praying for something where I'm not getting it. And the thing that you get sometimes is, well, you're going to get it, but not in your time, in God's time. And then people fall into these, well, I put on this amulet, and I all of a sudden just got feeling good, and people were friendly to me, and they relate that to the power of that crystal.
And the simplest way to say it is prayer isn't magic.
Right.
Because then we seek these things out. You know, crystals, the sage, we want something right away. We want something to happen. You know, I often tell people, like, God is not magic. That's not what we believe in. We believe in a God that is present. He accompanies us, and He listens to us. But we don't, like, control God in the sense of the sense of understanding of magic. And to do that, I mean, it's kind of also just the devil will and can appear to be God. The difference is that what the devil presents in our life will not bear fruit. That's the difference. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it takes time for someone to see that. And then they might come and talk to the priest. And just say, hey, I thought I was doing the right thing, but then all of a sudden I realized, like, this is happening in my life, or this is happening in my home, and all of a sudden, like, what's going on? And it's like, well, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, you know, certain practice or certain thing. And it's something that, and it's different because things manifest themselves in different ways. It's not, And you know, again, it goes back to that. Well, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't do it. But at the same time, it's like, well, you have to understand that it's like, well, my friend, he told me that if I did this, then he got a job like the next week, and so like I'm gonna do it too. I'm like, well, maybe he just put in more applications than you. Like, it's not necessarily, and as humans, sometimes we try to justify or explain things on a spiritual level, or just a mysterious level, and sometimes it's like, well, it's just life.
Yeah.
You know, I had someone who called and said, you know, I need you to pray with my friend. He's had really bad luck. And I kind of was like, and they said, well, he really needs prayer and this and that. And I said, well, I called them, I think I left them a message, and I said, well, I can pray over your friend, but that doesn't mean he's going to have good luck. Like, that's not my job. I'm not magic either. Like, people sometimes want priest magic. that doesn't work that way. You know, and like, your friend has had bad luck, that's sad, it's unfortunate. By what they meant by that, I don't know. They didn't really explain. They just left a message.
And it's funny because, you know, I find myself sometimes going, hey, good luck, God bless. You know, but what I wanted to ask is, culturally, as Catholics, as cultural Catholics, we fall into these superstitions ourselves, and do we promote this belief in crystals and amulets and Santa Muerte? Because, you know, when you're selling a house and you can't sell your house, what do? Well, you bury a statue of St. Joseph upside down, and then your house will be sold. Or even when I get these, and I get these a lot from family members, and usually older family members, and they'll say, you know what, so-and-so is sick, so we're going to pray 1,000 Hail Marys. Will you pray 100? And I'm like, well, what does that mean?
Right.
What does that mean? If we all pray 1,000 Hail Marys, they'll get better? I think, you know, there's somewhere in there where, are we doing it because we're asking for magic?
Right.
Or what is it? What is a good answer to some of those things where it's like, hey, just bury a St. Joseph?
Yeah.
Or, you know, even the thing where I lost something, pray to St. Anthony.
St. Anthony, yeah. They actually sell the St. Anthony with the baby Jesus that you can remove and put in a drawer. So you take away baby Jesus from St. Anthony, and then when you get your item back, then you give him Jesus back. Have you seen that one?
No?
Yeah.
We got to find that image.
Yeah. So it's the little baby Jesus, and he comes out, and there's a little drawer at the base of the statue, and you just put baby Jesus in there.
I love our faith.
Till you're able to get him back. Whatever it is that you're looking for, like if you're looking for something, or St. Anthony, some people are looking for a spouse, they'll turn baby Jesus upside down. That's another, with St. Anthony. He's a popular guy.
Yeah. I gotta Google that.
Yeah, I think they have it on Autumn. I think they have it.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Even on Anno.
Yeah, I think they have the real estate St. Joseph too. And so it's like, you know, it's one of those things. It's like, it's even a commercial thing now, you know, because people buy it. You know, what do people buy?
And then that to me, it legitimizes this misunderstanding of what the real meaning is.
And part of it too is that sometimes stuff is just handed down to us, you know. And even being in seminary, like when I entered seminary, I don't know anything I didn't know anything. I was 19. And even now that I've been ordained, like I don't know everything. Like I know where to look for answers though, and I will look for them. And I think that's what's important, and that's one of the things that I do when I do like formation stuff with people. I say, you don't have to know every answer. You don't have to know church history. You have to memorize things. But you have to know where to find the answer. If someone comes and just say, you know what, I don't know. It's okay to say that. I don't know. Don't make something up. Don't make something up. I mean, because we all know priests and lay people and youth ministers that have made something up and told the teens, or told somebody who had a question because they didn't know and they didn't want to be embarrassed. But just say you don't know. I don't know the answer.
Done that before.
But I will let you, I will find out. Or I'll tell you where to go. Or just say, hey, you know what, you have a catechism? Look it up in the catechism. You know? It's probably in there. I'll look it up. I'll get back to you next week. You know? And so I think part of that is what sometimes, and then when someone finds out that you lied to them, they're like, well, what else is he lying about? Like, Father so-and-so told me this, and he was wrong. Like, you know, what else has he said to me that's not right?
Because they will fact check you.
And our teens and young adults will fact check us. With the power of Google.
Yeah.
And as I tell people, every church document is online.
Mm-hmm.
Every document's online. And sometimes people get, we're getting a little positive, but it's like people complain like, well, Pope Francis said this, such and such. And it's like, well, did you read the document?
Yeah.
Did you read it? Because it's online. It's like 8 pages.
Yeah.
Like, go read it.
But they only get a clip.
They only get the whatever Ida Boutien said, or whatever was on ABC, or whatever was on Twitter. And it's like, go read the document, the whole thing in its entirety, and then come and talk to me about it.
Yeah.
Most people don't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so here's advice: before you get your panties up in a before you get upset, read the entire document. We're not going to cut that.
Read the whole document.
Read the whole document. Also, here's, you know, because when I was in college, yeah, my uncle wanted me to bathe in the holy waters of this place in the Philippines, because he said that this girl had powers over me, and that she put a curse on me to make sure that I fall in love with her. So I think my wife knows this. She didn't. She does now. But that was like, I was like, you're mad. What are you talking about? And so he said, someone put a curse on you. That's why you're not coming home and being with family. You're always with this girl. And so our curse is real.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of stuff on. Again, this goes back to what's the intention of the person that you saw. I remember I saw, I won't say what city it was. They came and saw me, and they said they were scared. This couple, they were scared. And they said, we went to go see a curandero.
What's a curandero?
It's like a folk healer. So now, curanderos are a part of Mexican culture. A curandero will tell you what kind of tea to take, you know, or if you have an upset stomach, or if you have a... but there's curanderos that are like herbal healers. And then there's curanderos that do like magic on the side. Or they mix things or blend things. And so just because you see a curandero doesn't mean that it's, you know, there's a lot of different elements that are involved there. And so then there's like fertility stuff and magic and all kinds of other stuff. So a curandero could possibly be a good person that's knowledgeable about herbal medicine and can, you know, traditional healing, which is perfectly fine. You know, it's not anything bad. God gave us certain elements and things in the world to help heal us.
Came from herbs.
And so, but some of them do magic stuff also. And some of them are fakes, and some of them do weird stuff, or actually are doing magic and stuff like that. But you don't know. You don't know the difference. So this couple had gone to see this person, and he told them that they had to pay him $5,000 or they would die. And I looked at them and I was like, I don't think that's going to happen. And I said, how long have you been seeing this guy? They said, oh, we've been seeing this guy for like 6 months. And one of them had an issue or whatever, and they said he was recommended to us by someone we know. So we went the first time, he charged us $1,000. Wow. Over the course of this 6 months, they had given this guy over $5,000 already. And he was asking for $5,000 or something bad was going to happen to them. And only he could fix what was going on. Later, I found out that the guy was arrested for fraud. He was a total fake. He was getting people out of their money. And I told the couple, I said, what you need to do right now, what I can do for you, and it costs zero, no cost, is you can go to confession. You can go to confession. I said, when's the last time you went to confession? Yeah. And both of them were kind of like, yeah. And I said, and if you need me to, I can go bless your house. Like if you feel there's something there, or if you feel what exactly is going on, because even they were just like he just wanted $5,000 and he said we were gonna die, or someone in our family's gonna die, and the reality is someone in your family might die, but it has nothing to do with this guy. Like, it's just life, right? I mean, I can very easily read your, and you see it on TV all the time. Yeah. Like, oh, so you have a family member who is ill, right?
Yeah.
And she's female.
That's true.
And she's maybe older.
That is so true, though.
And I think it's something that she's been sick with for a few years.
That is true.
And,
a couple of them.
Is she from another country?
Yes.
Okay. Is she related to your immediate family?
Of course. Now this is scary because.
So, I'm just reading. I'm just reading what you're saying to me, and then I can project something into it, and that's what these people do. They're quite good at it, and that's why in canon law, we can't do that in confession. If a priest does that to you in confession, there are ramifications for that. Because you can't control people. Yeah. You can't tell people that because of what you can do as a priest, that they will be healed. And so that's why the confessional, some of the strongest canon law is in regards to confession. And a priest can be removed from the clerical state easily for abuse of power in the confessional. But you see how easy that is?
Yeah.
I mean, and for someone, and you're in a normal state right now, right?
Yeah.
If you were upset, if you were depressed, if you were anxious, how logical do I sound to you?
And people fall into that. People easily fall into that. You know, I had a sister who lost her diamond ring in the Philippines. And she was distraught. She lost her diamond wedding ring. And what she did was someone told her, well, if you put like baby chicks on top of a coffin of someone who's passing, then that person who took that ring will give it back to you. And the person did. So she was like, it worked. And then she went to confession to the priest, and the priest yelled at her and said, that's so wrong, you can't do that. So I'm glad you went to confession. But for me, and I tried to explain this, is the reason why also is that person who saw that you did that at the wedding was more afraid of the curse that was coming out of that than from God. And it's like this whole thing of this misconception of how curses
and so
come about.
The easiest thing, and I tell people, if you're doing some of this stuff or it's something's happening in your life, and go to confession. Number one, go to confession. Get some holy water, bless your house or wherever it is that you are, or talk to a priest, and try to get some direction, because some of this stuff is pretty serious. I've blessed a few houses and I'm just like this is like something's going on, you know.
How do you know?
It's just kind of there was one case, and when I was almost newly ordained, or I'm not sure, quite less than a year ordained, and so this family came and they were like just hysterical, and they were just like, we need a priest to come bless our house. And I didn't know them. At a glance, I didn't recognize them. They weren't parishioners. And so I said, well, I think it was the only priest at the parish at the time. So I said, you know what, I'm really busy right now. I can't just go bless your house. Like, we can make an appointment. Like, give me your information. I'll call you. And so I said, and I gave them holy water. That's the first thing I do. Is like, here's some holy water. Bless your own home. Say a prayer together. And, if you need me, give me a call. And so on Sunday, that was like Thursday, Friday. On Sunday, they came. They were at mass, and they came again they were just like, something's happening in our house, like we need you to come, like. And I was like, well, okay, I'll call you like tomorrow, because on Sunday whenever people come to me and they're like, Father, can you do this? I always tell them on Sunday I remember nothing. Like I'll say hi to you, and whatever you told me, like, send me a message, because I'll probably forget, because I talked to so many people after mass. And so I called them, and they were like, can you come bless the house? I said, okay, sure, let me find some time. So I found time and I went. So it was in like an apartment building. And I said, what's going on? they said, oh, well, there's like stuff moving and we hear things, and I said, well, who's hearing stuff? Well, like there was like 4 or 5 people, and they said, well, like we've all experienced something, like whether we saw something move or heard something move or heard something. And I said, okay. I said, so what's going on? And that's when they were like, well, you know, it's just a bad thing. It's a bad thing. And see, but the thing is, whenever you bless a house like that, people are not willing to tell you what they did.
Sure.
They're not willing to tell you what they did or what happened. But I walked into that place, and my pre-sense started tingling. Like, I was like, oh man. Like,
hair back of your neck
like,
goes
I
up.
was like, whoa. So I just did a house blessing, just a regular house blessing, and I said, okay, here's the holy water, you can hold on to that. If anything happens, give me a call. I always say that whenever I bless a house. If anything happens or whatever, just give me a call. 90% of the time, they don't call back. Well, like, the following week, I get a call from a parishioner. And they're like, hey, Father, can you come bless our house? With the same exact description of the previous house. And I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. Like, that's really weird. So I said, yeah, fine, you know, I'll go bless your house. So I make an appointment. So so then I go, and I'm pulling up to this house, and I'm driving past the apartments that I visited the week before. Literally line of sight to this house.
Wow.
Across the way. And I'm just like, and I said, yeah, so what's going on? And word for word, it was the same exact thing from the other house. But these were parishioners. They went to mass. And they're like, it's really weird. Like, we don't do anything. Like, we don't. And I didn't say a word. And I said, okay, let me bless your house. So I blessed their house. And I was like, okay. And they were like, you know, thank you, Father, thanks for coming out. And I said, all right, you know, if anything happens, let me know, give me a call. About a month later, I get a call for a house blessing. House blessings, it's kind of weird because some people don't really know we do that still. And then other people, like, have us bless their house, like, all the time. So it's kind of a weird, but it's interesting.
It lost its power, and it did it again.
Well, it's kind of funny because some people will, like, remodel their house and be like, what needs to be blessed? Like, I always kind of joke, like, hey, we got a new faucet. Like, time to call the priest over.
By the way, Father, we got a new faucet.
So a month later, I get a call for another house blessing. And house blessings are common in that area where I was. And so I go bless the house. Didn't know the people. And I was just like, oh, interesting. And so I said, what's going on? I always ask, just like, what's going on? They just, oh, what's the new house? Or we just moved in. And okay, that's cool, you know. So they go, well, this is happening. Word for word, it's the same exact thing from the previous 2 houses. And I'm just like, what?
Were they close by? Or?
Well, this is the thing. So I'm like, that's so weird. Like, literally, because it vividly I remembered, like
what's the commonality?
That house, what's the commonality here? Like, that's so weird. So I blessed the house, and then I got back to the office, and then I went, what is the deal with this? Like, this is really weird. So I went into my calendar, and I looked up, and I said, well, that house was next to that house, and then this house was next to that house. So I put it on Google Maps, and it was literally a triangle.
Ooh.
And I was like,
I feel so creeped out.
That's the only time it's happened.
I would need some more wine with that one.
No, thank you.
That's the only time that's happened. But I was like, this is really, really weird. Actually, I'll take some too. I'm like, that's just really weird. Is that a coincidence? Like, is that just,
That
like,
is
what's the deal with that? Like,
so creepy.
but it was the same exact description, and it was like 3 different families. One that I know did go to mass and did, you know, but it was just something. It was something. And that's what, even as a priest, like, I'm not an exorcist. Priests are exorcists by virtue of their ordination, but to do a formal exorcism, it requires permission from the bishop.
Yeah, I was about to ask that, but
Yeah.
but before you leave that, I just want to know, did that stop? Or?
It stopped.
Okay.
It stopped.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just want to be out of the triangle.
It stopped. It's nowhere near here.
Okay.
Nowhere near this part of the diocese.
All right. I just want to make sure I wasn't inside of the triangle.
Wait, you did talk
close.
about the high deserts.
It's so weird. It freaked me out.
So, even as a priest, like, I don't know what that means.
Mhm.
Like, what does that mean? I don't know. But did I know that my blessing and the prayer I said was effective? Yes. And again, exorcists are trained. And to do a formal exorcism on a person requires permission from the bishop. So we can't just, we get phone calls every once in a while and be like, hey, can you do an exorcism on my son or my cousin or whatever? No, we cannot. Like, there's a whole process, and it's a formal process.
Does the diocese actually have an exorcist?
You know what? Well, actually, that's another thing. The exorcist is secret.
Right.
No one knows the identity of the exorcist.
Oh.
For the safety of the exorcist.
That's right. That is
Because then
so
he's
cool.
going to get all these kind of people calling him for all kinds of random stuff that are not exorcisms. I remember I was a seminarian, and again, I won't name parishes. We'll just say it's in the diocese. I was a seminarian. I was working at a parish one summer, and I was working at the front desk. And this lady was calling the front office, and my son needs an exorcism. And the secretary was like, "Man, we don't do that." Plus, there was no priest at the parish at the time. She said, "Well, I'm bringing him to the church anyways." And I was like, "Okay." So they arrive. It's the mother, the grandmother, the son who's older, and then some children. And they were like sitting there. Then all of a sudden, he starts like yelling and all kinds of stuff. And I told the secretary to call the police. Let's call the police. Like, this is not, like, we're not about to handle somebody. I'm not about to, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a seminarian. Like,
Yeah.
I don't. And so 10 minutes later, there's like 6 officers trying to arrest this guy. And he has like superhuman strength. And he was probably high on PCP.
Yeah.
I mean, really. And the mom and the grandma were like, he's possessed. And one of the police officers was there. Like, everyone the whole department like ended up there. Just because like it was just so chaotic. They arrested him. They transported him on an ambulance for evaluation to the hospital. He was probably having some sort of hallucination, drug-induced, and they were asking the mom, does he do drugs? He doesn't do drugs. He's a really good boy.
Of course, all the time.
And they were asking the younger children who were siblings, like, hey, what was he doing? Because he was babysitting them. Like, what was he doing? Like, was he doing drugs? Like, what was he doing? Was he doing something he wasn't supposed to do? And the kids didn't want to answer. And so it was like, that's not a possession. That's just drug-induced. Which, unfortunately, something interesting in my research, too, is some of the Mexican drug cartels actually employ, like, some witchcraft or people who do witchcraft and stuff. And they actually put
Drugs.
curses on the drugs. To allow them to get to the U.S. to make money or whatever. But sometimes, and this is not something that's like definitive, but just for me at least to really look at, the correlation between people who use drugs and mental health issues are massive. And especially a lot of these drugs now, like fentanyl and all these things. I'm also a police chaplain, so there's so many deaths right now because of fentanyl. It's a deadly drug, and you really don't know what you're buying on the street anymore. And some of the cartels, not all of them, but some of them had this practice of like putting curses on the drugs, so that if the police sees them, they would get cursed. The police officers, law enforcement, or people who use them. So, to me at least, I had this one moment where I was like, well, is there a correlation between the mental health problems that we have and maybe demonic possession or some sort of just all the stuff that's just part of that?
So curses are real. Or can be real.
Well, it depends. Now, I don't want to say like if you go to a legitimate witch, that's not what we believe in, but what is it that someone will unleash?
Yeah. Or what do you open yourself
Or what do
up
you
to?
open yourself up to? that you can't really answer. You're saying, well, I went because I wanted to get a new job.
Yeah.
I went because I wanted someone to fall in love with me.
Yeah.
I went because I wanted XYZ. But then this something else happened.
Yeah.
So what exactly did happen? I can't really say. The person that could say is probably the person that did whatever you asked. But even that is kind of it's just kind of all mishmashed.
Because I come from a medical background, and I always look at things in the medical aspect. You know, when I was in college again, I was working out really hard. You know, you can't tell today that I used to work out really hard, but I used to work out really hard, and it was in the hot summer humid heat in the Philippines where I was studying at the time. And I lay down on top of our kitchen that had metal roof, and I felt sick afterwards. And my aunt saw me, I looked like pale, and she said, this guy came around and he said hi to you. Did you curse him out, like verbally abuse him and said bad words to him? Because apparently he has this power of the evil eye. And she said, you're sick, and so I'm going to make this potion for you, which was like a bunch of herbs that she's going to boil up and you need to drink it. And I kept telling her, it's like, no, Thea, I think I have sunstroke. Mm-hmm. And I just need to drink a lot of electrolytes. Yeah. And so just give me some water and add a lot of salt in it, and I'll drink that and I'll be fine. But she was adamant that I was cursed by the evil eye and I was going to die. And so I was like, you know, just to accommodate my Thea, you drank it. And it was awful. I mean, it was like I was going to die from this potion, this concoction that she made. But I didn't want her to say, because she said, because if you die, it's going to be on me. And so, you know, people fall into these notions that can be sometimes medically explained.
Right.
Such as mental illness.
And that's something that's a challenge too, because I think especially for our young adults and our teenagers who have parents from another culture or who are first generation, second generation in this country, parents sometimes don't have the medical understanding you know, of a teen who has depression or anxiety, or they don't see going to counseling or therapy as something beneficial. So that's, we could do a whole nother episode on that.
And we will. We could have to.
And it's important because, you know, even in confession, I often tell people, thank you for sharing what you just shared with me. Have you ever spoken to a medical professional? Mm-hmm. Have you ever spoken to a therapist, a counselor, anyone that can maybe help you process these things that you're feeling? What you've done today is come to confession. This is a good first step. Mm-hmm. But your next step might be talking to somebody who can help you. And I've had people who said, well, Father, and you're sometimes, most of the time they say, well, I haven't spoken to anybody. And I said, well, I'm going to urge you, please do that. Come back to confession, but please speak to someone who can maybe further assist you. And sometimes I've gotten the answer, well, yeah, I have talked to somebody. They give me medication, I just don't take it. And it's like, well, maybe you should take the medication prescribed to you. Maybe that doctor or that therapist or whoever, maybe that's an instrument for you to help you find that balance in your life. And sometimes that takes time. You know, I remember I had someone who said, well, yeah, I took it for like a week and I didn't feel better. I'm like, well, it takes a little bit more than a week for brain chemistry to you know, to balance out and things like that. I'm not a medical doctor.
And we could talk about that, because I understand people who take medication, and it's a god-awful feeling. It slows you down. It doesn't mean, you know, sometimes, you know, your appetite and the weight gain and things like that. I understand the feeling with that, and I understand the patients who undergo that, and that's why they don't want to take the medication. Right. It doesn't make you feel good. Right. And you're thinking every time that we do take medication, it's supposed to make us feel good. Right. But the side effects of the medication kind of contradicts what the thought is of making it better. But again, that is another episode, folks, because we can talk all day with that.
Real quick, you had mentioned the evil eye.
Oh, yeah.
So the evil eye.
Also, this other thing that includes the evil eye, you know what counteracts that evil eye, is for me to put my spit somewhere on your stomach, because wherever it aches. So if you have a headache, it's this evil eye. It's like literally, I'd spit and put it on your forehead or on your belly. I'm like, oh no, I'm not having anyone.
That's a new one for me.
Yeah, that's something in the Filipinos. It's like, my brothers, that's dirty. There's such a thing as is it? Illness that comes from that.
But the evil eye is something that every culture has, in some way or another. In the Hispanic culture, we see sometimes like wrist bracelets, and have the little eye on them. And sometimes you'll see them mixed with like saints medals. Mm-hmm. So it's like a Saint Michael with an evil eye together, just to get more effect, you know. And people will often ask me to bless items. The first thing I do is I look over the item. And not too long ago, a parishioner came up and said, "Can you bless these bracelets?" I said, "Yeah, no problem." So I look at them and I go, "Wait a second, I can't bless these." She goes, "Well, I bought them at a church." I said, "Well, the church should not be selling them. They were the evil eye with the St. Michael." I'm like, "You bought that at a church?" "Yeah, they were selling them." And I said, "Yeah, anything with an eye on it, you should not wear. We don't believe in the evil eye. It's not. It's a superstitious thought." And every culture has some sort of manifestation of it, of wearing, putting the evil eye on a newborn child so that it's protected from harm, and we seek a need to be protected against harm, which is just a human thing. No matter what faith you are or where you believe, it's a human thing. But when we try to control things or that's when it gets kind of weird. Yeah. And that's why, again, it's important that we have guidance from the church. And it doesn't matter what kind of a prayer group or it doesn't matter what kind of theology you have, every single group needs direction. It doesn't matter where you are on the spectrum of tradition or orthodoxy or whatever you want to call it. Every group needs tradition because they all start doing weird things. All of us have had an experience of like a prayer group, or someone tells you something and they're like, "Yeah, you know, are you Catholic?
You believe it?
You're Catholic? Oh, there's this group I go to," and then they do this, and you're just kind of like, "Is that like that's kind of weird?" Like,
but again, there's that thing. It's just like, okay, I can't wear that. I can't wear that amulet. I can't wear that crystal. I can't wear that. But you give me a miraculous medal. Well, for some people, it's like, well, isn't that the same thing?
Mm-hmm. And so, and and again, this goes to, and in the Catechism we have a lot on like devotions, and how to direct. I think it's like a chapter. It's a pretty good read, because it clearly kind of defines what should be done and how it should be done. But as Catholics, we have, and that's part of the thing too, is like medals. I have medals in the football team. I always bless. I blessed the St. Thomas Aquinas medal, and I gave them all a medal. And I said, "This is not good luck. This is not an amulet. This is not good luck. We ask for the intercession of Thomas Aquinas, the patron of this school." Mm-hmm. That's the school. We ask for his intercession. Just because we wear this medal or we have it doesn't mean we're going to run faster. It doesn't mean we're going to play better. That's defined by how we practice and how we do in the classroom. And that's on us. God's given us the ability to do these things. We ask for his help in doing them. But we don't put everything on this piece of metal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Reminds you.
And you know what? We're superstitious about anything and everything. All of us have something that's lucky. All of us have some certain item that we wear. I mean, it's a part of, even like sports. We have a Super Bowl coming up. How many people are going to wear a jersey they haven't washed all season?
I haven't washed my jersey.
How many people are going to wear a certain pair of shoes? All of us do that. It's part of like our humanity. I mean, and I always joke, like, whenever we have football games, I take the same exact route every single time. I drink a blueberry Red Bull, every single time. You know, I listen to certain music every single time. Does it mean we're going to lose if I have to take another direction or I have to change the station? No. I don't even have to be at the game.
Mm-hmm.
But how is it that, our human mind just sometimes gets kind of in that...
Looks for patterns.
In that, yeah, we just
It's
do it that certain way.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, well, now, in regards to, like, the Mass and, like, rubrics, it's like, well, yeah, that's rules. Like, but that's not like just we're making stuff up. But when we live our life, all of us do a certain thing, a certain way, even here, I always drive up a certain way into the driveway when I come into the church. I always park in a certain spot next to my office. It's not marked for me, but that's my spot. And
he's calling everyone and saying, "Hey, get out of my spot."
Well, we have like 10 clergy spots in the front that are marked, but I don't park in those. I don't. I just like to park next to my office. But all of us have like these routines or these habits, or even like, and it's part of just our human nature. I like to cook. I do things a certain way, just because that's the way I do it.
It's comforting.
It's comforting. I use a certain knife. I have a favorite knife. I do things a certain way. And so it's one of these things that we have to kind of look also at our humanity. But also we have to look at what's our intention. What's our intention? That's important when we're looking at these things, or just in general. What's our intention? What are we trying to do? Are we trying to grow in our relationship with God? Are we trying to harm somebody?
Yeah.
Are we trying to help ourselves?
And I think that's truly vital with all these occult practices that we have. It's to comfort us because we're lost. Maybe it's a lack of catechesis and understanding, but there's so many things. Even in my culture, we have a lot. I mean, I think the Philippines has the most faith healers, and if you've ever seen a faith healer, they literally, they'll go on your stomach and they'll squeeze something. All of a sudden, there's blood that's coming out, and they pulled out whatever it is evil that's in your body, and people actually believe that. I found it entertaining, but people actually will go and pay money for people, these faith healers who do that, and then they blow prayers in there, and then they'll do religious prayers, and then there's this attachment with culture and faith healing and native cultural practices that all get meshed, and then people get lost into understanding that is what our faith is about. And then you have people who are non-Catholic who see that, and then misconstrue that as, yes, you guys are idol worshippers.
Yeah.
And I think that's a danger that we face, and I think, again, while you're writing that book, I think it's so important to read about it, to hear about it, and to talk about it.
And I think one of the challenges, and I mentioned it before, like with Santa Muerte, a lot of the people who believe in that, some are normal everyday Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
They go to Mass, and they have a Santa Muerte statue at home. Some don't go to Mass. They have a Catholic affiliation, but they don't live out their faith. They don't. And the big thing that I looked at when I was researching is they feel disenfranchised. They're the poor, and I mentioned a lot of the. It's actually interesting in LA, East LA, next to the. What's it called? The Union Market. Is it the Union Market? I don't go to LA much, but it's down the street from the cathedral. There's this little market. It turned into a little hipster market now.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Literally next to that, there's a little shop, and there's this massive 4 or 5 foot Santa Muerte statue.
Yeah.
With a multicolored cape. And a lot of the colors in Santa Muerte mean something. Mm-hmm. You're asking for something. Green, yellow, red, blue. You're asking for something. So when you go to the dollar store, you know how you see candles, there's different colored candles. Obviously in our tradition we use white candles. And there's really no need for any other color.
Yeah. And there's the St. Michael that's red.
But then you have, like, if you go to like Hispanic market like Cardenas maybe, or even like Food for Less sometimes,
Yeah,
you can find Santa Muerte candles that have like a prayer on the back, and it has like the Santa Muerte image on it. And they're like $1, you know. You're asking for something. And part of the thing about Santa Muerte too is that people pray for protection from death. A sure thing in our human existence is death. We will all die.
Yeah.
But for people who perhaps risk their lives, who drug trafficking, criminal element, or just live in dangerous areas, death is an everyday thing. Like, it's not a, and to be honest, death is an everyday thing.
Right.
We just don't really see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a police chaplain, so we get like phone calls like, hey, we have an unattended death, can you guys come out? You know, it happens every day. I go to the hospital, to the ICU, I anoint somebody, they die 20 minutes later, or they die as I'm anointing them. That happened a few weeks ago in the ICU. It's not something you're expecting to see every day. And it's not something that we're not expecting to die today. Could it happen? Yes. Are we ready to die? I'm not sure. As Catholics, we should not fear death. And that brings that connection back to Dia de los Muertos, All Souls Day. We don't fear death.
No.
We don't fear death. Death is not something to be scared of. But when you look at Santa Muerte, death is something that perhaps can be controlled. So I'm going to pray to Santa Muerte. I'm going to offer money, drugs, whatever, so that I may not die today.
Wow.
May it be another day. May it be another day. But then you have on the flip side, if I don't appease Santa Muerte, she can take my life. So that's when you get this kind of weird, and really because Santa Muerte is not like a recognized religion, it's a practice, it's devotion, a folk devotion. There's all kinds of, there's a spectrum of things that, one of the cartels in Mexico, the Templarios, the Knights Templar, I'm not sure if they're still around, they were around for a while. The leader thought himself like a religious leader. He created his own like Bible, and they pulled a lot of stuff from like the Templars in the Middle Ages, and they started doing all kinds of witchcraft and black magic, and they were like sacrificing people to Santa Muerte.
Oh my gosh.
So you know, this can get really weird really fast. Of course, we understand that that's not the norm, but it can go all that way.
And it's so hard to break that culture. It's so hard to break that culture because young people, older people, get so attracted to the mysteriousness of things like the Santa Muerte, about faith healers, about crystals and things like that, that opens you up to demonic possessions and changes in behavior. So what are some of the things that you would recommend to our listeners, as someone who might find this podcast and listen to it, and they have a Santa Muerte at home, or they have a devotion to Santa Muerte, or practice in these occult practices? That there is so much that we can mention on this podcast. I think we need to do a part 2, such as astrology, things like that.
There's all kinds of stuff.
There's so much stuff that we could literally do a series on these. Personally, in like my family's homes, we've had Buddhas before because of our Asian heritage and things like that, and lions. I remember one of our priests, Father Suresh, comes into my house, and my wife had this statue of a lion that's facing a door because that was gifted to us, that was supposed to ward off spirits or bring you luck. And he walked in, as soon as he walked in, said, "You have to get rid of that." And I was like, "Take that out." And my wife goes, "Where'd you do it?" It's like, "He told me to get rid of it." So it's in the black trash can. But one of those things is, what do you do? One of the things is fraternal correction. And I remember one of the priests from Our Lady of Guadalupe. We had a youth who was sick and dying. And I had taken a really good picture of her hand with a scapular that she was given. And he immediately texts me and says, "Get rid of that. That is the Santa Muerte. It's bad, it's evil, it's not Catholic." And I was wondering why that scapular looked kind of off.
Yeah.
And I would have never known anything about it unless I was corrected by someone who said, that's bad news.
And I think...
So what do we do
Right.
when we
and the challenge is, how do you bring about an understanding? Because it's not just saying get rid of it. Yes, you have to get rid of it. Yes, it is bad. But how do you go about doing that in a pastoral way? And how do you go about doing that so that they understand why? The first thing I do is just ask the person. Oh, I'm just curiously asking. Oh, what is that? Oh, it's just a statue. Someone gave it to me. Oh, okay. So do you say certain prayers, or do you? Oh no, someone just gave it to me. And then that's when I can say, oh, well, that's Santa Muerte. That's probably not something you want in your home. Does whoever gave it to you, are they a devotee of Santa Muerte? Do they do anything of that nature? And that kind of opens up a conversation. Now, if someone tells you, which I have had, "Father, I have statues of Santa Muerte in my house, and I need to change my relationship with God, and this and that." And I said, okay. I said, well, you need to get rid of all those statues. You need to get rid of all these things. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't.
Now, is it because they won't because they're afraid of if I get rid of this, then it'll come back at me?
Some do have that fear. I remember I had one where, this doesn't happen all the time, by the way. Also, this is not just to scare everybody. Tony's over here scared. He can't even speak. Oh, it's okay, Tony. It doesn't happen every day.
I'm channeling all of it too.
But it does happen. It does happen. I mean, it is happening in our communities and where we live. And one time, so I told them, you have to get rid of it. And she said, okay, Father, I'll bring it to you. She didn't want to get rid of it, so she wanted to bring it to me. I said, okay, fine, I'll destroy it. I can get rid of it. And then she kind of went quiet. And then I reached out and I said, hey, what happened? What's going on? You told me you were going to come. She goes, oh, Father, I just, some family member came by and I gave it to them. So they took it. So it's not in my house anymore. And I'm just well, yeah, but you should not just give it to someone else. That's not, And so it's kind of opening up a way to have a conversation. To see what exactly is their understanding of it. And what exactly are they doing. Because sometimes it just may be that they just don't know. But other times they know, or they are doing prayers, or they are doing different things. So you can't just say it's bad. Don't do it. And just in a broad way. You kind of have to see where people are at, and then from there try to kind of guide them and teach them. And then just say, you know what? Well, this perhaps is not the best practice. This perhaps is not the. And then you kind of have to, work through what that means with that. And so, and this is something that just has to be done one-on-one.
Yeah.
And which makes it hard. Because, I mean, if I just were at Mass and I just was able to just teach about all this stuff, I might be able to get more people. But not everyone is involved in this stuff, And on Sunday, our homilies are for everyone.
Can you imagine this being a homily?
No. No, cannot.
Could be at Reliance. I'm just kidding.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This is kind of 101, but you were talking about blessing them, right? What is the effects of holy water? And when you have calls of certain people, because you say you always give people holy water first. Arnell's, for those just listening, Arnell's eating a donut.
He's in ecstasy over here.
Is it good? I was losing my train of thought. You good?
Said, for who can see the face of God and live? That's a vegan donut, by the way.
It's vegan. This is really... Where is this from?
The donut bar.
Where is that located?
There's one here in town, but there's one in Riverside, too.
The donut bar.
The food lab in Riverside, downtown Riverside.
Oh, yeah.
It has
That's
like...
why it was familiar.
It has like solid red sugar on top with cream. This is like it's good. And we're not even sponsored by them.
But we
Sponsor
will
us.
be now.
Sponsor us.
Oh my gosh. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you.
You gotta get that crunch on the mic, though.
Mm. ASMR. Mmm. Oh, well, we need a napkin.
Anyway.
Go ahead, Tony. Sorry.
Holy water. Holy
What are
water.
the effects of holy water, and is the priest doing the blessing more powerful than a layperson just blessing their home?
So anyone can bless any item, and then as a household, as a family, everyone has authority. That's. We might just have to wait for her to finish eating this donut. He's having a spiritual moment over here. I tell you, it's a vegan donut, but it's literally one of the best donuts I've ever had.
Oh, no, stop for now.
Of any kind. Like, it really, really is good. So holy water. Holy water, we bless it. It's a sacramental. It's not magic. It's not something that you're... people use it in different ways. We also have, and this is where we kind of connect things. We can often use Catholic sacramentals as magic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not right. You know, I once had somebody say, well, you know, I'm gonna go mop my house with holy water. And I was like, no, don't do that. Like, just clean your floor. Like, he's fabuloso. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Because that kind of, I mean, it's not right. What's it going to do? What's the effect? What's your intention, too?
Mm-hmm.
What are you trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
And so, most holy water, we just bless it. Just plain water, do the prayer over it. We also have exercise. You can exercise the water, not exercise like running, but exercise like exorcism. And that has exercise salt in it. So that's a different kind of holy water. It's holy water, but it's got the salt in it. And it's just a couple grains. It's not like salty water. Just a couple grains, and there's a blessing said, and it's a different blessing. So what I always... And it's an important thing, too, because sometimes we just go, well, get the priest. Get the priest. Get the deacon. Get the priest. Every household, as parents, as a mother and as a father, you have authority over your home. You have an authority that's given to you by your vocation. And do you pray over your children? Do you pray over your home? You have authority over that. People don't, I think, often have an understanding of that. Like, your prayer has authority as a father over your home, your house, which you have. Do you use it? Do you pray that way? Most oftentimes we don't. As a mother, do you pray over your children, your home? You have authority over that. As parents, you have an authority over. And so that's something that I think we don't really look at, because we just go, well, go get an ordained person. Which is good, it's important, but we overlook that. So I always, say, go ahead and bless your home. You can bless your home. And that's like also like parents, like you can baptize your child.
Mm-hmm.
If your child is not baptized and is in danger of death, you have that authority. You have that ability. You don't need to say, hey, we have an emergency, call the priest. No. This is just for an emergency.
Right.
This doesn't mean go out baptizing everybody. We do have rules about that, but if it's an emergency, if it's a sense of death or just a dire thing that's happening, a parent can baptize your child. They don't need to call the priest for, hey, come and baptize them, something's happening. Just have to clarify that. Don't just go out baptizing people. There is some order to that as well in the church. But as parents, as a father, as a mother, there's authority there. And I think there's something to be said in the culture that we live in. We're kind of moving to another point, but it's like as men, as fathers, as head of a household, you have an authority to pray over your family. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, especially I'm Mexican American, born here in the U.S., my parents are from Mexico, sometimes we see faith as something that women do. Mm-hmm. Women pray. Women go to Mass. Women take the children to Mass. Men stay at home. They drink beer. They watch soccer or football or whatever. Mm-hmm. As men of faith, we need to be able to guide our families. And we need to be examples of faith. We can't just say, well, that's what women do. And I think that's something that's a mixed thing. And there's a lot of things that's a whole nother episode. We're like, this is like an episode brainstorm here.
Yeah, we're going to have to do that Estovir episode, be the man.
But that's why I always say, just bless your own home. If there's something else, then call the priest.
So it's not necessary to bless it twice? Because, like, say the family blesses their home and then they do another call. What would be a good reason for you to come, if that makes sense? Like, why would you need to come back if it's already been blessed?
So that would be in case there's something that's happening. Okay. So like they hear noises or there's like smells or... So
you would need to investigate as to what's going on.
Then that would require a priest or deacon. And there's different formal prayers that we can do in those cases. To bless the house, we can use salt, we can use water, we can use oil. And again, it's not a common thing. Mm-hmm. It's not a common thing. But it does happen. It does happen. And so that's when, it's scriptural, the priest Jesus has authority over demons. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He expulses them. There's a lot of, and that's true. I mean, there's no other way to say it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're not, I'm not, as a priest, I'm not going out looking for demons. Like, it's not, there's movies like that, they're out hunting demons and stuff. Like, that's not what we do. We mostly work in an office and say Mass and hear people's confessions and take appointments and answer emails. But these things do happen some way or another sometimes. And so that's when I always tell people, if something happens, then let me know, give me a call. Mm-hmm. Or I'll go bless a house and I'll say, if anything changes, let me know. And sometimes, once in a while, I do get a call back and I have to go back and bless it again. Mm-hmm. So, and
then say those specific prayers to
it just depends. It just depends on what's going on or what they describe or different things. But again, no house blessing is the same. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No sacrament is the same. No blessing is the same. Everything is different. People are in a different place. People have a different experience, but they require, something. And it's interesting because even non-Catholics sometimes will request house blessings, which is an interesting thing.
I do see that.
Because we have Catholics who are, let's say, cultural Catholics, mm-hmm. or Christmas and Easter, mm-hmm. But now we have people like who are not practicing at all, who just need a priest. Like, I need a priest. It's got to be a priest. Mm-hmm. You're a Catholic priest? Mm-hmm. Like, I'll get the random phone call. And it doesn't happen very often, but, like, you're a Catholic priest?
I took that. that call.
You're a Catholic. Do you have a Catholic priest? A real Catholic priest?
Yeah.
We need one. Because we got weird stuff. And I saw a movie one time.
Yeah. It requires a Catholic priest.
And I talked to somebody and it requires a Catholic priest, you know.
So that's when I believe. So, I was reading the scripture, and it's in Acts 19, and it talks about, things like this. And in this it says, where did I start from here? It says, then some of the itinerant Jewish exorcists undertook to pronounce the name of the Lord Jesus over those who had evil spirits, saying, I adjure you by the Jesus whom Paul preaches. But the evil spirit answered them, Jesus I know, and Paul I know, but who are you? And the man in whom the evil spirit was leaped on them, mastered all of them, and overpowered them, so that they fled out of the house naked and wounded. And this became known to all residents of Ephesus, both Jews and Greeks, and fear fell upon them all, and the name of Lord Jesus was extolled. Many also of those who were now believers came confessing and divulging their practices. And a number of those who practiced magic arts brought their books together and burned them in the sight of all, and they counted the value of them and found it came to 50,000 pieces of silver. So the word of the Lord grew and prevailed mightily. When I was looking at this, and I was looking for a scripture verse, that verse 19, chapter 19, verse 19, just resonated to me because so many people are looking for solutions. So, Amazon is making more than 50,000 pieces of silver in this, and people reading about practices, about witchcraft, about Wiccan, about all these things. And I probably could say that they're buying more of these books than they are of Catholic and faith books. So, again, what do we say to those young people, to those people who are looking for self-help guidance in the form of these magic arts?
It's not something that's easy to just broadly answer, but I think we're all seeking truth. We're all seeking God. We're all seeking beauty. And there's so many things to misguide us and to tempt us and to kind of turn us. And again, the question is, what's your intention? What's your intention? Were you just bored on Amazon and you bought crystals in a spell book? Did you read it in a magazine? Do people read magazines anymore? Did a friend tell you about it? You went over to your friend's house and they have crystals or whatever. Where exactly, what is your intention in using these items? And where is God, in this? When we look at, we're called to live the gospel, we're called to holiness. We're not called to perfection, we're called to holiness. Mm-hmm. And so it's something that has to be a conversation. But if you have no one to talk to, if you're not asking, then you just do whatever, And unfortunately, sometimes, they call the priest because it's like, well, I messed up. I messed up. Yeah. Something's happening. Something's weird. Or just I don't understand what's happening. Or what's the deal with this. And so then that's when we just say, well, okay, so what's going on? What's going on? And a lot of the times we just hear well, my friend told me, or oh, my family member told me. And it's like, well, they may not have told you the right thing. It's not the right answer. Well, my aunt's Catholic. Yeah, but that's not the right answer. She doesn't know either. And so part of it is just that we have this need for catechesis. And we have so much available to us. It's all available. Everything's online. You go to the Vatican website, every document, the Catechism, the Bible, everything is there.
Seek it out.
And we just don't read it. We don't look at it. Because it's not the easiest thing to do.
Right.
You know, it's easier for me to just go on Amazon or for me to go on Twitter and see what someone's saying about something versus me actually knowing what it is. And I think that it's important for us as we walk with especially youth and youth ministers and young adults, how can we work through some of this stuff, you know? Because again, the solution is not like, hey, don't do that. You know, like in Mexico, the government with the previous presidencies, with the army, they literally rolled into certain parts of Tepito, the town, and just destroyed Santa Muerte shrines. Just destroyed them. Literally just bulldozed them, and they said, you're not going to do this. And you're not teaching anybody anything by that. You're just saying, we fear you. We fear that, so we're going to get rid of it. We're going to suppress it. And it's like, well, we have no need to suppress something. We just have a need to catechize so that people don't do it. Will people do it? Yes. But will people have a better understanding? That's what we need, so that they can make a better decision, you know, about what it means or what it's opening up or what exactly is they're doing. And there's so many things, and everything's become commercialized. I mean, there's something where the statues, rosaries, scapulars. I mean, you can get anything, and that's something too. Like even as like images, I don't know. My personal thing is, we put everything on a T-shirt and a bumper sticker and a coffee mug, and then we get upset that people don't think things are holy. Like, you know, it's like, well, you put Our Lady of Guadalupe on everything, on a keychain, on a, you know,
surfboard.
Yeah, surfboard. I mean, I don't know. Personally, I just get a little bit uncomfortable when I see some of these things. It's like, well, because I'm just buying them. Like, or when you see scripture slapped on everything, like just on a T-shirt, bumper sticker, whatever, and it's like, well, that's sacred. It means something. Like, we need to double. Sometimes I think that we just need to think about things before we purchase them. And it's something that's a challenge, I think, because again, it's like Amazon, you know, everything you buy on Amazon, and it's just easy to buy stuff, you know, and sure, yeah, I'll buy a bracelet, and yeah, I'll take a T-shirt, and yeah, I'll take a hat with Jesus on it, and it's like, well, yeah, but what's the intention? And sometimes we don't even think about that, you know, and it's, I mean, it's something that I think everyone has to answer for themselves. I don't think there's like but like when I walk into like a bookstore at a cathedral or a shrine, I'm like, should they really be selling all this stuff? Like, do I really need a keychain from the shrine?
Unnecessary Catholic swag.
Yeah, unnecessary Catholic swag. I think that's a good way to put it. Like,
it's gonna be our quote of the week: unnecessary Catholic swag.
Put that on a T-shirt. Put that on a T-shirt.
Hashtag. You better claim that and own that before somebody else takes it.
Well, isn't there a company called Catholic Swag? I feel like I'm throwing them under the bus.
But like, you know, and I think that's part just of our society, how we are now. Like, I mean, it's a market. There's things to be sold. There's things to be bought.
Right.
And, you know, that's fine. No limit on enterprise and ideas and, you know, things like that. But it's like, do we really need some of these things? You know, do we really need all of these items? And I don't know. That's just my very personal take on that. I have to say that.
I agree, Father.
You know, because it's like, well, yeah, you have all this stuff, but what's the intention of it? Is it leading you to prayer? Is it leading you to reflection? Is it just decorating your house?
Is it a statement?
And I think you hit the nail on the head there. What is your intention with all that? You know, and because, you know, unnecessary Catholic swag is unnecessary if it is unnecessary Catholic swag. But if it's Catholic swag and you're actually using it and the intent is there as a reminder, then go for it. That's my thing, is it leading you closer to a relationship with the Lord and understanding what Scripture is and leading somebody else to that. But if you're just fashionable, I like this shirt because it just makes me look good.
You can buy a rosary at like Forever 21 now.
Really?
I'm pretty sure.
But does it have the actual numbers? I mean, I went to a store at one time, I was like, oh, that is so cool, because their statues had a
fashionable
rosary.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think it's missing a couple of beads.
a couple beads.
It's like, it's missing a lot of beads.
It just looks cool.
It just looks cool.
It just looks cool. Yeah.
It's really cool.
So I mean, you also have the kind of nuance, because if you can buy a rosary or what looks like a rosary, is it fashionable?
Yeah.
Is it actually a spiritual
Tool.
because anyone can wear a rosary. You don't have to be Catholic. Anyone can wear one.
It's kind of
You
like
can just
buying a
put
new
it-
Bible. It's like
I mean,
you gotta get a new rosary because the other one didn't work.
and so, that's something that I think all of us can reflect in a different way. I mean, we all have these items. I mean, we have rosaries. We have, but I don't know. But that's just my very personal take. Sorry, we kind of digressed on that.
We did digress. But Tony, do you have any more that you'd like to say? Yeah. Any more questions that you have, Father?
Yeah, the very, very first thing that we talked about. What is the difference from occult and occult?
Occult. But one of the things that I wanted to share, because I kind of looked up with the whole thing with what occult was. And I think today when we hear about occult, we term it as something evil.
Right.
It's always associated with
Right.
evil. But in the time of Aquinas,
Right.
when he said occult, it was something that was mysterious and something that
Right.
was unexplained.
Unexplainable.
Like magnets.
Right.
Nobody could understand
And
back
it
then.
kind of goes in the Middle Ages. It kind of went along with alchemy.
Yeah.
They're trying to find a way to make gold or find metals. Chemistry. So it wasn't necessarily a negative connotation. I think now it does have a negative connotation, just because of all this magic stuff and
Yeah.
and again when you get into all this stuff, and again I mentioned just different practices like Wiccans, and then you have Santeria and Voodoo and Palo and all these other traditions and different things that are celebrated, and still to this day they're done. I mean, it's not. Certain areas have certain practices, and certain cultural groups have other practices, and so it translates pretty well actually to every single culture. This kind of folk magic, folk healing, and some of it's more like just like this is good luck, and then other stuff is just a little bit darker. It's a little bit more kind of like, oh, so what is that like? That's a little bit more, but I think it's every culture will struggle with this tension. Here in Southern California, we're just so blended. There's so many different cultures that you have so many different things, and part of the challenge is that people can pick them up.
Right.
Without knowing.
I just had a friend, and well, yeah, but you're Filipino and you have a Santa Muerte.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, my friend's Mexican. And that kind of interchange can happen with a place such as California, Southern California, where there's so many different generations and ethnic groups and different identities and things like that. And so that's part of the challenge here in Southern California, because it's like, well, I'm teaching this, but they have a different, you know what I mean? And then it changes too, like someone who's not Mexican who picks up Santa Muerte, and they have no clue. They have no connection to Mexico, but now they take it into their spiritual practice or devotion, and then but it changes the meaning then.
Right.
Because they're like, well, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Like Santa Muerte is good. I'm a Wiccan, and Santa Muerte is good. It's a good.
Yeah.
It's a good thing for us, and it's like, well, kind of. Yes, no, maybe. But do you know where it comes from? Do you know what it is? Do you know where it originated from? And that's when you can kind of get into a deeper conversation.
And on that note, I think I was actually going to read, in the Catechism, paragraph 2117, that speaks a little bit about witchcraft and things like this. But Father's Wi-Fi here sucks, so I have no signal. But I did tell a listener that I would mention her, and it's _hairstylist_Melissa. She does hair in Chino. So she's new Catholic or new practicing Catholic. Go support her business. I don't know where it is, somewhere in Chino, but find her on Instagram. He found it. Okay, so here's the thing. See, we're like thinking. It's like paragraph 21:17 says, all practices of magic or sorcery by which one attempts to tame occult powers so as to place them at one's service and have a supernatural power over others, even if this were for the sake of restoring their health, are gravely contrary to the virtue of religion. These practices are even more to be condemned when accompanied by the intention of harming someone, or when they have recourse to the intervention of demons. Wearing charms is also reprehensible. Spiritism often implies divination or magical practices. The Church, for her part, warns the faithful against it. Recourse to so-called traditional cures does not justify either the invocation of evil powers or the exploitation of another's credulity. It's I love that part because it's right behind 21:10, which is we shall have no other God except for the Lord. And so I think when we start going that direction, it just causes us to seek someone who has more power than God.
Right.
So
and it just I mean, this is not a theological way of saying it, but it just gets weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it just gets weird because then we try to justify stuff and we try to do things in a different way, and again, just because it's mysterious doesn't mean it's God. And we have to discern, what are we doing and what are we doing it for, and is this leading us closer to God? And then what's our intention? Because sometimes then it becomes I can control whatever this is, and I can control people, and that's not a Christian attitude.
Yeah.
That's not something that will lead us to grow in our relationship with God. And then we just have so many different ways to do it. I mean, we talked about crystals and sage, and but again, it's important too because even our Catholic sacramentals, we can abuse them. Even the sacraments can be abused if we're not careful. So that same discernment is something that's important for us because, again, you don't need to drink a gallon of holy water and you'll be a better person. Like, I mean, I'm sure you could drink a gallon of holy water, but
if it's Kangen water,
it's, it's. But then it's like, how do we view these sacramentals then? Are we using them? Are we abusing them? Do we not understand what they actually mean? And what are they leading us to? Because if we become superstitious in our sacramentals, that's a problem too. I'm not here just to talk trash about the occult, say it's a bad thing. We also have that slippery slope on our side. And then people say, well, you Catholics, you guys are always sprinkling holy water and doing all kinds of weird stuff and saying Hail Marys and, what are you guys up to? And so that's something that's important for us too, because is it the saints are not magic, oh, I need to have a statue in my house, otherwise something bad will happen. Well, bad things happen, whether or not you have a statue, that doesn't control anything.
Right.
Is it maybe a good place for you to pray every morning?
Right.
Is it a good place for you to have like a little shrine or a little home chapel? That's fine. Does it conduce you to prayer? If you just have it there and you never ever pray, I mean, it's like the family Bible that never gets open. What's the point of is it just a dusty Bible? Like, it's the Word of God, but it's not effective in your life. So what's, we have to have this connection with what we have. And as a sacrament, sacramentals that the Church gives us, that are approved by the Church, that are guided by the Church, how is it that we use them to grow in our relationship with God? I always say, well, you have your phone. Like, do you have a scripture app on your phone? Do you have a prayer app on your phone? You have like a bunch of games and stuff. Do you have anything that will help you play? Pray, I mean, not play, pray. Do you have anything that will help you pray on your phone? Like, you have all this social media, how much time a day do you spend praying on your phone? versus social media or
Right.
texting or whatever. Because everything can be used, everything that we have. I mean, phones are a great tool. Can they be misused? Yes, greatly, but they can also be used for good. And so, it's part of just reflecting in our daily life. You know, how do we live our faith out? How do we, and it's hard because this is we're moving to another generationally.
Mm-hmm.
People, we have a different understanding, you know. Even like priests, I'm the youngest diocesan priest. I'm 32.
Woo.
So
I lost the bet. What? I said 35.
there's a bet.
I aged him.
I'm 32. Yeah, I'm the youngest diocesan priest. Hopefully this year someone younger than me will get ordained. I've been the youngest for like 6 years now. But the older priests and the newer priests, we all went to seminary, but we have a different way, you know.
Different outlook.
We have smartphones, and we do things in a different way than some of the older priests. We have some of the monsignors who are, one is celebrating 60 years next month.
Yeah.
60 years. And
he's like, I'm 32.
so it's just like, wow, you know, see, that's a long time. But he's seen so much happen. But the way that he ministered to people, I mean, he worked at the pastoral center. He says, you know, we had fax machines. We didn't have internet. We didn't have internet. We had fax machines and phones.
Yeah.
And that's how we ran the diocese. And we weren't able to like use YouTube. We didn't stream anything. Like we had a radio station, like an AM radio station.
Right.
You know, so things have changed, but the truth that we have in God does not. The tradition that we have has not. What's handed down to us is there. The way we minister is changing, and it's changing like every day. I mean, there's so much stuff going on in the world with our youth and our young adults. I mean, it's just so much changes so fast, and there's new things that are just temptation, that's sin, that's, you know.
And I just have to say, when people say, I'm so afraid of that, I'm excited. I'm excited that there's so much change. I'm excited that things are moving. I'm excited that you're 32 years old and 3 years younger than what I thought, 1 year younger than Jesus when he went on. But it's exciting times. It's exciting times for me to allow people to literally live out a life of holiness, because there are challenges. But as you said, there has to be conversation. There has to be listening. There has to be dialogue.
And that's the challenge, because sometimes we just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
We just say, well, don't do that. Or let me tell you what to do. You know, do this.
Yeah.
And when we do that, I mean, it's good for some people. Some people, it's easier to just follow what they're told.
Yeah.
And they just naturally, that's part of their who they are. But other people need to have things explained.
Yeah.
You know, why am I doing this? How am I growing in this? You know, what's the point of this?
Right.
And we have to acknowledge that we can't just, especially when it comes to youth ministry and young adults, this is not, we've been kind of weaving
We
this.
just went all over the place. This is like the most schizophrenic episode that we've ever had.
No, we've had worse.
We also got to get you back to mass.
No, I'm good. I'm free.
Okay.
I'm free.
All
What the, oh wow, it's we're
you're cutting it short.
we're setting a record here.
We
for,
are.
Longest.
But we did have a record a long time ago, but we cut out half of it. The episode that shall not be mentioned. But I'm glad you say all these things, and you know, we started with occult, we started with things in conversation and dialogue. I think all these things are important, and that's the purpose and the premise of this podcast, is so that people will listen. So it's a great segue to another podcast we're going to do with Father Alex, which is actually on listening. hopefully. And instead of wine, we're having cigars, by the way. Different person. But it's good that we have these conversations and that people who are listening hear these things that are vitally important in our faith. Older, younger, especially a lot of the people who are listening to this podcast are younger and young adults. It's good to hear someone who is of their age, because they're not being told that this is what it is. They're having a conversation with them, and they're being listened to, and they're being affirmed, and they're being guided. And I think that's what I love, the fact that you came on, and that Tony asked some significant questions, and I just do color commentate. But this was good. This was good. Probably one of my favorite episodes, because you know when I'm totally interested, when I'm hardly talking.
Yeah. I was like, are you alive? Like, that's why I kept looking over. I was like,
he was busy
like,
eating the donut.
I was like, and really great donuts that I had. Look at that. Look at, it's crusted. I'm going to go off on a tangent.
It's a creme brulee donut.
Creme brulee donut with sugar, like sugar that's like crystallized
yeah.
sugar on top, which is amazing. Oh, Father, before we end this podcast, can you say a prayer? Because we did talk about Santa Muerte, and people who are listening, probably if they are, delving into the occult and practices like this. Can you close us off in a prayer and a word of wisdom that they can have? Go away with.
Yeah, I think, again, we have to discern. We have to discern what it is we're doing in our life. And is this leading us to God? What is it leading us to? Does it lead us to ourselves, to others? And what's our intention in doing this? We're human. we are going to have these conflicting emotions and these things with people in our life. We're not going to wish everyone is well all the time. That's just a part of humanity. But when we intentionally go out of our way to do some of these things, then we're really, as I think that Catechism, that verse that you read, it's so important for us to go and read these documents. It's so important for us to go a little bit deeper than what we know. And is it uncomfortable? Yes. But when it comes to our faith, we've been given something that is something we have to treasure. And in order to treasure, we have to know it. Because we might have it, but we really may not even know what we have. There's just a vastness and a richness to what we have. And sometimes we just reduce it to a very simple thing. And I think that, oh, I'm just Catholic. Oh yeah, I'm Catholic too. You're Catholic? Okay, cool. It's Ash Wednesday soon. Okay. I know you'll. I always joke, on Ash Wednesday you know who's Catholic because everyone's marked. But how is it that we're actually living our faith out? It's not just a sense of looking Catholic. How are we living out our faith as children, as students, as parents, as whatever our vocation may be, or whatever we're trying to figure out what our vocation is, that too. And really identifying those gifts and abilities that God gives to us, how are we living that out? Because the way we struggle is not the same person our neighbor will struggle. And the way we pray is not the same way our neighbor will pray. But we're all called to preach the gospel. We're all called to live out holiness. And that's something kind of hard to define too. How do I live that out? How do I share that? I'm not going to get likes for that. I can't tell if I'm doing it right or if people are happy. And it's not about just seeking emotions. It's about grounding ourselves in Christ. And when we do that, we're able to see and understand things. And it also means that we're called to walk in a certain way. And this means that some of the things that we have in our life are not compatible, with the gospel. That we have to push them away or walk away from them. And it's something that I think requires continuous reflection. Because it's not something we answer just one time. Oh, I figured it out, I'm good now. No, because as we go through life, as we mature, as we go through different stages of life, our faith, the way we live it out, changes. Our prayer changes. I always say, whenever parents, there's a sacrament of marriage, and they get married, and they're in love, and then they have a child, and everything changes. Because the way they pray changes. The way they love changes. And then even in joy and even in sadness, when parents lose a child, that changes the way they pray. That changes the way they respond in faith. And so we need to take moments to really reflect on what that means for us. And we don't really do it. Usually it just kind of hits us. Like it's been 10 years and then boom. Oh, I'm having like a spiritual crisis or like a spiritual... Because since my first communion, I hadn't really thought about what my faith means, and I'm in college now. Now what does it mean? What does it mean? What does God mean? What does everything mean? Or, we're like 30 years old, and we're getting married, and it's like, oh, I'm getting married now. Like, what does that mean? Like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to pray? I can't pray like when I was single, or when I was in first communion class. We have to be able to pray where we are today. Not where we were, and not where we're going to be, where we are today. And I think that's important for us. And that means that we have to take a moment to reflect. We've got to turn our phones off. We've got to turn our electronics off. We've got to have a little bit of silence. We've got to go to confession. We have to go to adoration, or just find a quiet place for ourselves to be able to seek the voice of God, to listen to what God has for us. Sometimes it's just to be still. We're just so busy sometimes. We just need to be still. Just to be. And it's in this that we can try to figure out how it is that God is calling us. But again, once we do that, we have to respond. That's where the catch is. And sometimes we don't do it because we don't want to respond. I'll just wait till next year. I'll just wait till Lent. I do all my work during Lent, just 40 days. The rest of the year, I just kind of hang out. But it's this attitude that we take in our life. I often said, there's people who say, well, I'm gonna give up drinking during Lent for 40 days, but the rest of the year I'm just gonna be getting drunk all the time. Well, if you're gonna do that, what's the point of 40 days? I'd rather you drink during Lent for 40 days and not drink the rest of the year. That's probably better for you. That's probably better for you in the long run if you're looking at things. So again, it's our intention. And so as we walk through life and as we have different things that manifest themselves in moments of temptation and of challenge, it's important for us to find that silence and create that silence sometimes in our life. I think I'm just turning into like a homily.
It is. I like this one.
This is turning into a homily. But especially when we have some of these things that perhaps are mysterious or occult, or then how is it that we can turn to God? How is it that we can see how God is calling us to respond? And perhaps we may not make the right choice. Perhaps we do have things we're not supposed to have. Perhaps we're kind of delving into things that we probably, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm a little bit uncomfortable, but I'll try it once. Or maybe I'll go again, How do we kind of reorient ourselves? And how do we rid ourselves of these things that are kind of an influence on us? Because again, we can't control God. God is not magic. And so it's important to, first off, within ourselves, make that reflection, and then from there to make a movement. And again, confession is a good starting point. If you need to talk to a priest or a deacon about it or what's going on. And I have to acknowledge some priests and some deacons are not as knowledgeable about some of this stuff. They might just say, don't do it. Just throw away those crystals and you'll be fine. But we kind of sometimes need to go a little deeper than that. And that, some of it, I mean, unfortunately, and it might be on you. You know, might have to go to the Catechism and look up, you know, what does it say about devotions? What does it say about some of these things? What is Scripture? How does Scripture guide us? And then from there, you can make that movement or respond differently. Sometimes these things don't change right away. It may take some time to kind of move in a different direction. But the first thing we have to do is take a step to make that movement. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we move in a different direction. And it's a challenge that, and there's just so many, and we've been talking for a while now, and there's so many, like we said, there's so many things that are interconnected in this.
Right.
There's so many different elements, there's so many different things. And again, you know, maybe next month there'll be a few other things we can talk about that are new. Yeah. And, but God doesn't change. Our faith doesn't change. And that's what we can hold to. That's what we can look to. And I think part of it too is that we need to talk about it. We need to have opportunities to talk about it, to ask questions. And sometimes we don't. So we just say, well, that's what someone else told me. Or that's what, I Googled it and that's the first thing it said. Yeah. So I'm doing that. But that discernment has to be something more active. Discernment has to be a little bit deeper. And this is not, like, again, it's not something we're going to do in one day to the next. It's a process. And as we learn, we're able to respond better. And these things will always be present. I mean, no matter how much we catechize, no matter how much, how good we are at making YouTube videos about the faith, there's still going to be some sort of element that's present of some sort. Some kind of folklore or culture or folk devotion, or there will always be, because we're human. We're human. But what are we going to do? You know, how am I going to respond? We perhaps can't control what other people do. Exactly. But we can change what we do. You know, we can change how we practice our faith and how we genuinely look to God. And it's not something, I mean, I wish I could answer something and just, that would be the answer, the solution.
That's what I wanted.
But if we're living our faith, we know what leads us to God and what doesn't. Exactly. And if we're actively moving towards God, even with time, we're able to tell something that perhaps we thought led us to God, and it doesn't. And then we can say, you know what? Wow, like that was not a good decision. That was not a good relationship. That's not a good person. That's not a good situation. And that can be part of my life. And that's hard. That's hard. But that's just sometimes the reality of our lives. And as we do that, we mature in our spiritual life. And we respond better to what we face, whatever it looks like. I think that, is that good? Is that,
yeah, that's good.
I could keep going for another hour.
God is a constant. You have mass in 30 minutes.
I actually don't.
Oh,
I actually don't.
So I was like, I'm targeting.
That's why he's putting in his homily right now.
We could keep going.
I love this. I love that fact. And Father, as we close this episode and we schedule you for our next episode, you know how I already put that in? Scheduling him for the next episode.
He's locked in.
He's locked in. You're locked in. Can you close us with a prayer for all those people who are listening? It's like, wow, I got all that, but I'm still concerned about my attachment to these things of the occult.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for this opportunity. As we gather here and acknowledge your presence in our life, we ask that you strengthen us so that we may respond in faith. help us to discern how it is that you call us to live our lives, and to identify these things that perhaps distract us or just challenge us in responding to your presence in our lives. That whenever we have doubts or challenges, that we may seek your truth, your goodness in our life, so that this may guide us. It may allow us to see how it is that we can respond in our actions and our words. We won't be perfect one day to the next, but we can respond in a better way. And it's in this that we turn to your faith, hope, and love that are eternal. And we ask you to allow us to be able to share goodness by our lives, especially perhaps when we're most challenged to do so. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Well, fam, that's what we have for this part of this episode. We never forgot, we forgot to ask what Father's book title is going to be, but maybe you guys can send us a couple of titles for his book. I actually wouldn't think that he would pick that, but yeah, you're welcome to send it to us. But fam, that's all we have for this episode. If you have any questions, comments that you want to send us, please send it to @Catholic.dad50@gmail.com. You can also DM us at Catholic.dad or Tony at Minitangled, right?
On Instagram. Yes.
On Instagram. And Father Tomas at Father Tomas's Boss.
On Instagram.
On Instagram. You can always catch him at St. Catherine of Alexandria. That's what we are recording today. And as always, thank you for supporting us. And if you want to be a patron to our podcast, you can go on our bio. There's a link there to our Patreon page. Also, if you want to see some things as you're trying to look for the Catechism, we also have links in there that you can go to our bio. There's the links there for our Catholic faith information. It's all in there, so you don't have to Google it. We've already attached it in there. And if you're thinking of vocation is important. We also have the link to vocations for the Diocese of San Bernardino in our bio. And on that note, we'll see you in the pews. And as always, live a life of holiness. Be blessed and be third.
Different points of view and highs and lows, a new perspective everywhere you go. Open up your mind and drown out the noise of different generations of the girls and boys. So sit back and relax, this Catholic podcast. Don't overreact if the thoughts are abstract. When it's hosted by Catholic.dad, who knows what's gonna happen?
Hey, what's up, fam?
Different points of view and highs and lows, a new perspective everywhere you go. Open up your mind and drown out the noise, and see if this connected.
What's up, fam? To connect generations and situations about faith, life, and whatever comes along the way.
Expect runaway thoughts like a runaway train. Break into conversation like links of a chain. Make a Hail Mary pass, hope this connects. Have a question for a guest, put it to rest. Live a life of holiness, lead by example. Follow at Catholic.dad and Minitangled. Christ leads our way, he's the good shepherd. Pray for one another, be blessed and be third. Different points of view and highs and lows, a new perspective everywhere you go. Open up your mind and drown out the noise, and see if this connected. Are we not praying for them? We're asking for prayers?
Yeah, no. It's kind of awkward if I do that after that. I'm just like, we'll be praying for you.
No, don't worry. That'll make it in the video.
Because I was like, oh, that was a cool one. We'll see you in the pews.